Hello wildflowers, and welcome back to the Rambling Rose. Spring has arrived here in the Southern Hemisphere, and the days are beginning to sparkle with the promise of new adventures. Each morning, Mr. Rose and I take a walk around the edges of town, past our neighbours' rambling cottage gardens and little farmlets, along country roads and through meadows, all the while dreaming of our plans for the flower and veggie patches this year, chatting merrily about freesias and poppies, lilies and gladiolas, like the two little hobbits we are. Here in our quiet corner of the world, snow-white blossoms flutter to the ground on fresh spring winds, dragonflies dance across fields of wildflowers, and eager new shoots are finally peeking their heads above the soil. Even my beloved roses are covered in fresh green growth after their winter hibernation. It's an exciting time for any garden fairy or green witch. The air feels alive with a new energy, ideas are flowing, and I feel a wave of creativity as the light returns and the cheerful season of Ostara beckons. It just feels like possibility. So, with possibilities in mind, and before I lose myself entirely to the garden for the next 9 months, there is one last little room I want to make over at Belladonna Cottage. A cosy, light-filled nook of a space, a sunroom you might call it, with a view of the flower garden. And it's here where I thought I could pursue another passion, writing. Yes, it's true, I've spent the winter plotting away in my mind, fleshing out the bones of a dark romantasy novel or two, fairy tales all my own that I long to write down. For the longest time I've been waiting to put pen to paper, and maybe, just maybe, what I needed all along was a special, magical place to sit down and write, to be transported to another world for a spell. And so the idea for a light academia meets country cottagecore writer's nook in the mudroom of all places was born. Let's take a look at the space we have to work with. Yes, it's tiny, but it's filled with light, especially in the early morning hours. And the best part about it is the view of the cottage garden. It's the best view in the house, and the only room with floor-to-ceiling windows. Well, rather modern sliding doors actually, and whilst I reluctantly gave up my dream of replacing them with crisp white timber French doors, I could still see myself gazing wistfully out at the garden from this little nook as I penned my epic novel. Next, I set about choosing a colour palette. I took inspiration from different items I'd collected over the years. The cracked paint of an old garden mirror, a well-worn chair, and the faded hues of my wedding bouquet. The dried petals and leaves gave me shades of dusty olive and moss green, rich burgundy and pale rose, off-white and antique gold. And though I toyed with the idea of painting the walls a berry jam colour, I settled on a soft muted green meets grey by Sherwin-Williams called Evergreen Fog. I mean, even the name itself was giving light academia and putting visions of Heathcliff haunting the moors in my mind. The perfect atmosphere for my writer's nook. Being the thrifty witch that I am, I decided to make my own version of Evergreen Fog using some leftover paint from our recent bathroom makeover. I mean, how hard can it be? In truth, it wasn't hard at all. It was kind of fun and satisfying to create the perfect shade, and a little bit magical to know that the colour was made from mixing Dragon's Eye Red and Wild Thing Green. And just like that, I think we have a match. If you live in Australia, the colour swatch I used to make this match was called Snug as a Bug by Tint. And if you've been following this channel for a while, you know I only use this paint because it's non-toxic and vegan. It doesn't smell at all and, well, it's just beautiful to work with. You'll find the link below. Now, I've only been married to a crafty carpenter for a few months now, but at this point, I'm giving it 5 stars. Because when I asked him to make the doors of the writer's nook just a little more French country cottagey, he got to work right away adding panelling, and the result was, so good. Once the panelling was finished, I painted the doors a soft greyish off-white that would, I decided, look fresh and elegant against the grey-green walls, again taking inspiration from those charming French and English country cottages. This paint colour is also by Tint, and it's called Fika, which means something along the lines of tea time in Swedish. I thought that was rather cute. At one point in time, this little cottage fairy taught art history, and if I think back to my own lectures, I'm pretty sure the German Bauhaus movement marked the beginning of the end for ornate, intricately handcrafted things. Over the years that followed, everything became streamlined and minimal. Function prevailed over form, and I think it's rather funny that nowadays all I want to do is bring the ornate back. I mean, don't these doors look so much lovelier now? But speaking of functionality, I did mention earlier that this room was technically the mudroom, and so before I took it over completely with the more whimsical purpose of being a writer's nook, I thought it best to dedicate at least one wall to storing our coats and boots and brollies, the things we most often grab on our way out the door. And to do this, I started by repurposing this beautiful piece of timber we found under the house, with some coat hooks pinched from an antique wardrobe we recently found on Marketplace. See, it's all coming together. I couldn't bear to even film the old light shade from this room, but if you can picture a black steel geometric monstrosity sort of imprisoning a poor sad light globe in a cage, you'd be getting close. It was one of the design choices from the previous owner that honestly puzzled me to no end. But anyway, on to brighter things with this lovely new light shade. See what I did there? And now for my favourite part, decorating. Starting with this enchanted antique writing desk that really inspired this whole room makeover. It's definitely the centerpiece of the room, and the craftsmanship is absolutely beautiful, with ornate drawer pulls, a working lock and key, and little cubby holes for an author's treasured items. I've wanted one like this for so long, and I really do fancy it is enchanted and will be whispering poetic inspiration to me for years to come. On the opposite side of the writer's nook, I placed all those things we reach for most often on our way out the door. Coats, boots, and a basket for our brolly, and a case of lawn bowls. Because, well, what else do hobbits do for fun in a small country town these days? For the top of the desk, a few more items that spark joy for me. A magical mirror, our dried wedding bouquet, a decorative tin, some favourite books, and a direct line to the fairy realm. To finish the space, I wanted to add some softness, colour and pattern, with a little embroidered pillow for the chair and a lovely botanical rug for the floor. But being such a high traffic area and a runway for a boisterous border collie charging in from the garden, that rug was bound to get really dirty. So I allowed myself a treat and ordered a machine washable one from Ruggable with a pattern by William Morris. Now, would you believe it? Mr. Morris was not only an English gentleman and textile designer of the 1800s, but he was a poet, artist and writer too. Now, you couldn't get more light academia than that, and I love the rug even more, knowing that little bit of trivia. The next little side quest for my Writer's Nook makeover was to create a magical gallery wall with at least a few of the old picture frames I've been squirreling away after each visit to the antique market. If the artwork inside didn't already have a moody Victorian vibe, I replaced it with vintage prints that I felt suited the light meets dark academia aesthetic. After all, a witchy writer's nook destined to inspire a series of dark and atmospheric fantasy novels simply wouldn't be complete without a snippet of romanticist landscape, a pair of lovers in the library, and a downy owl companion perched above the desk. That iconic symbol of dark and lonely places, that feared spectre haunting the silent woods, the favoured bird of doom for poets like Wordsworth and Keats. See? The dark muse is stirring in me already, Wildflowers, and I think I like it. Finally, I turned my attention to the view from my writing desk, determined to make it just as pretty as could be. Now, I know these safety decals are designed to stop a clumsy wildflower from walking into doors, but you see, that is giving my domestic skills a lot more credit than they deserve. In truth, I am an eternally preoccupied garden goblin with perpetually dirty windows, so there's no chance of me ever walking into these unawares. Although Mr. Rose is blind as a bat. It's probably why he insists he's married to a supermodel. Oh well, let's hope he doesn't have an accident because it looks super cute. And with the glass so sparkling clean, at least for now, I can see these hanging baskets swaying in the breeze, filled with cheerful pansies, baby's breath and nemesia. They certainly help brighten up the view while I'm waiting for my summer annuals to bloom. At this point, after adding a few finishing touches to the cottage garden, I was ready to show you the final reveal. But on a spontaneous Sunday drive, I discovered one last thing to add to the writer's nook, possibly the most quintessential item of all. And you know, when I laid eyes on it, I couldn't quite believe my luck. There, at the local antique store, I found my very own vintage typewriter. Made in Holland in 1956, she's in perfect working condition. She came with a full ribbon and her keys are a dark forest green. And just like that, what was once an unremarkable white room has been transformed into a cozy, dreamy little writer's nook, fit for a budding romantasy novelist with lofty literary aspirations and a love for all things old world and charming. From the warm timber of the perfect antique writing desk to the burgundy and blush of the new floral rug, the colours seem calm and muted, like a gentle daydream. And I do feel like my take on evergreen fog was the perfect fairy tale paint colour that will feel at home here beside the cottage garden throughout the seasons. After all, spring is only my second favourite season, you know. And so I'm secretly delighted to think how enchanting this colour palette will be come autumn, when the wheel of the year turns again and the leaves begin to fall. With the rush of spring over and the darker days ahead, come autumn I can see myself spending many hours here tapping away at the typewriter, perhaps by candlelight, under the watchful gaze of my downy owl. But of course, writing is not the only thing I plan to do at this enchanted desk, with its sweet sunny position and pretty view of the cottage garden. Now that the room makeover is complete, I could hear my art journal, Wild Fairy Magic, calling out for some attention. And so, before my beloved daffodils have finished blooming for the season, and with my patient furry familiar curled up at my feet, I went to work on a page I'd left unfinished for some time, celebrating the return of the light and the pagan Sabbath Ostara. I so hope you enjoyed this episode, sweet friends, and if you did, please don't forget to like and subscribe, or head on over to Patreon to help keep the channel alive. If you'd like to start an art journal of your own, just like Wild Fairy Magic, you'll find them in my online store, along with art prints, oracle cards, colouring books and more. All handmade with love and magic right here in Australia. Finally, if there are any other dark fantasy fans out there, I'd love to hear your book recommendations in the comments below. Even though I have a growing pile of them already waiting in the wings, I don't think you can ever really have too many books, right? Until next time, sweet friends, whether it's autumn or spring in your corner of the woods, may the magic of the season fill your days with wonder. Merry meet and merry meet again, and a blessed turn of the wheel to all. Happy Ostara for those in the south, and Merry Mabon to those in the north.